The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched 300 meters across, its domed ceiling displaying a perfect replica of the home nebula where the Council had been founded 12,000 years ago. 47 species had seats in this chamber, arranged in concentric circles based on seniority. The founding races sat closest to the center platform. The newer members sat in the outer rings. Their voices literally farther from Power God Ambassador Ji-Hoon Park stood in the human section, Outer Ring 17. He had been humanity's voice here for 20 years, watching the same patterns repeat endlessly. Proposals denied. Concerns dismissed. Human innovations quietly adopted while humans received no credit. He was tired, but today was different. Today he carried information that could save billions of lives, and he knew they would ignore it anyway. Beside him, Dr. Minji Kong clutched her data tablet so tightly her knuckles had gone white. She had spent 3 years compiling the evidence, running simulations, checking and rechecking every calculation. The stellar phenomenon approaching Council space was real, predictable, and catastrophic. 12 inhabited systems would be destroyed within 2 years if nothing was done. She had evacuation plans. She had shielding technology. She had solutions. Captain Do-Yin Lai stood at attention behind them, his military uniform crisp and decorated with honors from the border conflicts. He said nothing, but his jaw was tight. He had seen too many meetings like this. Council, Prime Velthur, called the session to order. The avian leader's feathers gleamed silver under the chamber lights, and his voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of tradition. The council recognizes the human delegation. State your business briefly. We have important matters to address today. Ji-Hoon stepped forward. Prime, members of the council, we bring urgent news of a cosmic threat that will reach our space in 23 months. Dr. Kong will present the data. Minji activated her display. The hologram showed star charts, trajectory calculations, and impact predictions. This is a Class 7 stellar ejection event. The phenomenon will devastate 12 systems. We estimate 8 billion lives at risk. However, we have developed technology that can shield inhabited worlds. We also have evacuation protocols for systems that cannot be protected in time. We need Council authorization to begin implementation immediately. The chamber was silent for exactly 3 seconds. Overseer Krinth, an insectoid whose species controlled all Council procedures, clicked his mandibles dismissively. The human delegation presents fear without proof. Such claims require peer review by the Council Science Directorate. We will schedule preliminary analysis in 6 months. 6 months? Minji's voice cracked with disbelief. In 6 months, we will have lost critical preparation time. The data is complete. The threat is real. We need to act now. Velthur ruffled his feathers, a gesture of irritation. Dr. Kong, humanity has been a council member for only 150 years. Many species here have millennia of astronomical experience. We do not make hasty decisions based on young race panic. Young race panic? Ji-Hoon felt his carefully maintained diplomatic calm begin to crack. We have documented evidence. We have solutions. We are not asking for resources for ourselves. We are trying to save lives. Ambassador Zelik of the Reptilian Concordat spoke up from Ring 8. Perhaps we could at least review the human data before dismissing it entirely. Krinth consulted his procedural display. Ambassador Zelik, you do not have standing to call for emergency review. That privilege requires Ring 5 seniority or higher. Then I invoke emergency session protocols, Ji-Hoon said. This is exactly the kind of situation those protocols were designed for. Denied, Krinth said flatly. Emergency protocols require 2,000 years of council membership. Humanity qualifies in another 1,850 years. Laughter rippled through some sections of the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the kind that comes from beings who cannot imagine their rules could be wrong. Dayun leaned forward and whispered to Ji-Yoon. We warned them about the Kepler station collapse too. They reviewed it for 8 months while people died. Then they used our solution and never mentioned us. Ji-Hoon knew. He remembered all of it. Every proposal ignored. Every innovation stolen. Every time humanity had tried to help only to be patted on the head like children playing at importance. Velther raised one wing for silence. The Council acknowledges humanity's concern. We will follow proper procedures. Now, we must move to today's primary business. As you all know, this year marks the Council's 12,000th founding anniversary. We will vote on the proposed Eternal Monument project. Minji stared at him. The monument? You want to discuss a monument while 12 systems face destruction. The monument represents Council unity and tradition, Velther said. Something your species might understand better with more experience. The vote will proceed. The monument project required resources. Lots of resources. Exotic materials, construction crews, and most critically, computational power and engineering expertise. The kind humanity had been providing to countless Council projects for decades. Ji-Hoon looked at the proposal details on his tablet. The monument would cost enough to evacuate 3 systems completely. The timeline would consume the exact window they needed for emergency preparation. Prime Velther, Ji-Hoon said quietly. If you proceed with this vote, you are choosing a statue over billions of lives. We are choosing to maintain Council dignity and procedure, Velther replied. The vote will now commence. Ji-Hoon watched the votes come in. Species after species approved the monument. Some because they genuinely valued tradition. Others because they owed favors to the founding races. A few abstained, but abstaining meant nothing in Council politics. The measure passed with 73% approval. Minji looked like she might cry or scream or both. Do-yoon's hand moved to his sidearm before he caught himself. Old combat instincts. Ji-Hoon stood very still for a long moment. In his 20 years here, he had tried everything. Diplomacy, compromise, working within the system, making allies, following every rule. None of it mattered because the system was not designed to work. It was designed to make the powerful feel important, while actual problems went unsolved. He stood up. The movement was simple, but in the formal context of Council proceedings, standing without recognition was a violation of protocol. Ambassador Park, Krinth said sharply. You do not have the floor. No, Ji-Hoon said. I don't. I never really did I? He looked around the chamber at all 47 species. Some watched him with curiosity, others with annoyance, a few with something that might have been sympathy. For 150 years, humanity has been part of this council. We brought our technology, our resources, and our hope that we could work together for the good of all species. We contributed to infrastructure you now depend on. We solved problems you ignored. We followed your rules, respected your traditions, and waited patiently for our voices to matter. His voice was calm, but it carried through the silent chamber. Today you have shown us that our voices will never matter. Not because we are wrong, but because we are young. Not because our ideas are bad, but because they are ours. You would rather build monuments to yourselves than save the lives of those you claim to represent. Ji-Hoon picked up his tablet. Minji and Do-yeon stood with him. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will save those who wish to be saved. We will share our solutions with anyone who asks. But we will not waste another moment seeking permission from people who value procedure over life. He turned to leave. Minji and Do-yeon followed. Ambassador Park. Velther's voice was sharp with shock. You cannot simply leave the council. There are procedures for withdrawal. There are negotiations, transition periods, penalties for breach of membership accords. Ji-hoon looked back one last time. File the paperwork. Send the bills. We'll be too busy saving lives to read them. Goodbye, Prime. Enjoy your monument. They walked out of the grand chamber. Within 6 hours, every human in council space received the same message. Within 48 hours, humanity was gone. The first sign of trouble came 3 days after humanity left. Station Harmony, a major trading hub in the outer sectors, experienced a computer system failure at 0400 hours. The failure cascaded through life support, gravity controls, and atmospheric processors. 20,000 beings woke up to emergency sirens and the slow realization that their environmental systems were dying. The station's chief engineer, a crystalline being named Vex, frantically tried to access the repair protocols. The system asked for authentication. Vex entered his credentials. Access denied. He tried emergency override codes. Access denied. Every system showed the same message in plain text. Human maintenance contract expired. Please renew service agreement. Vex stared at the message. Human technicians had maintained these systems for 30 years. The maintenance had been so reliable that Vex had never bothered learning the underlying architecture. Why would he? The humans always fixed everything. Now there were no humans to call. Across council space, the same scene repeated thousands of times. Medical facilities discovered their diagnostic equipment would not boot. Communication arrays went silent. Power stations began experiencing fluctuations. Shipping routes that had run flawlessly for decades suddenly became navigation hazards when the human-designed traffic control systems stopped updating. Sujin Choi had warned them this would happen. She had been the human trade coordinator for Sector 9, managing supply chains and logistics for 17 species. 2 months before humanity walked out, she had sent detailed reports to the council explaining exactly how integrated human technology had become. No one had read the reports. Now Sujin sat in a small human colony on the edge of council space, watching the emergency broadcasts with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. She took no joy in suffering, but she had tried to make them understand. They had dismissed her as a junior trade clerk worried about her job. They are calling it sabotage, said Hyunwoo Nam, the engineer sitting beside her. The council is telling their people that humanity deliberately broke everything when we left. Did we? Sujin asked. Hyunwoo shook his head. We took our people and our proprietary technology. That is not sabotage. That is leaving. They just never realized how much of their infrastructure depended on us, because we made it look easy. On the screen, a council spokesperson was explaining that repairs would be completed within weeks. Hyunwoo laughed bitterly. Weeks. They think this is a simple fix. They do not understand that we spent decades integrating these systems. You cannot just replace that overnight. The economic collapse came next, and it came hard. The Council's currency exchange, which facilitated trade between all member species, froze completely. The exchange used algorithms designed by human mathematicians to handle the complexity of 47 different economic systems. When humanity pulled out, they took the algorithms with them. The system tried to function with its outdated core programming and failed catastrophically within a week. Currencies that had been stable for centuries began fluctuating wildly. The Avian Dominion's credit lost 30% of its value in 2 days. The insectoid hive's trademarks became worthless outside their own space. Species that had imported food began experiencing shortages. Species that had exported manufactured goods found no buyers who could pay. Merchant Guild Master Prex, an aquatic being who had spent 50 years building trade relationships, watched his entire network collapse. Human shipping companies had connected his Waterworld products to 23 different species markets. The humans had handled logistics, shipping insurance, route optimization, and currency conversion. Now those routes were empty. Prex's warehouses were full of goods no one could buy because no one could transfer payment. He had tried contacting the human companies, hoping to negotiate a private contract. They sent back a polite message saying they were too busy evacuating refugees from the cosmic threat zone to take on commercial clients. The cosmic threat zone. Prex had heard about that. The warning humanity gave that the Council had ignored. He pulled up the data that Dr. Minji Kang had released publicly after humanity left. The threat was real. It was coming. And his home world was in the impact zone dot in the council chamber. Emergency sessions were becoming daily events. The sessions were not productive. This is the insectoid hive's fault, declared Ambassador Talix of the Avian Dominion. Your rigid bureaucracy drove the humans away. Quinth's mandibles clicked with rage. The Dominion's arrogance made cooperation impossible. You treated the humans as servants, not partners. The Silicon Collectives. Exploitation of human computational designs was shameful, added another voice. They, Aquatic Federation, voted against every human. Proposal out of jealousy. Someone else shouted. Velther tried to maintain order, but his authority was crumbling. For 3,000 years, council sessions had been calm, orderly, and dignified. Now they were shouting matches, where old grudges surfaced like poison. Ambassador Zelik of the Reptilian Concordat sat in his seat, saying nothing. He watched the chaos and understood what was happening. Humanity had not just left. They had been the glue holding the entire council together. Their technology, their diplomacy, their willingness to work with everyone had masked how fragile the council really was. After the session, Zelik went to his private quarters and sent a carefully encrypted message to a human contact. The message was simple. We need to talk. The response came 6 hours later from Ambassador Ji-Hoon Park. We offered solutions. You wanted monuments. Good luck. Zelik read the message 3 times. It was not cruel. It was not even angry. It was just honest. Humanity had tried. The council had failed them. Now humanity was done trying. Meanwhile, humanity was very busy. Captain Do-Hin Lai commanded a fleet of 32 ships in the cosmic threat zone. They were evacuating civilians from 3 systems that could not be shielded in time. The operation was running with military precision because Do-Yoon had planned for this. He had known the council would refuse to act, so he had prepared for humanity to act alone. Transport 17 reports full capacity, his communications officer said. 20,000 refugees on board, mostly families with children. Good. Send them to Safe Harbor Station. Bring in Transport 18 for the next group. Do-Yoon checked his tactical display. They had evacuated 200,000 people in 3 weeks. They would save another million before the deadline. Not everyone, but as many as they could. No one had authorized this. No council permission had been granted. Humanity was just doing it because it needed to be done. Dr. Minji Kang was on one of the evacuation ships, helping process refugees. A young crystalline child, barely old enough to communicate, had asked her why humans were helping when the council had been so mean to them. Minji had knelt down to the child's eye level. Because you need help. That is the only reason we need. The child's parents had cried. They were not alone. Hundreds of refugees were learning that humanity had not walked out on them. Humanity had walked out on a broken system. There was a difference. Back on Station Concordia, Velther received his daily briefing. The news was worse each day. 14 systems had declared they were considering withdrawing from the council. 6 were negotiating private agreements with humanity. The Monument Project had been halted because 3 of the 5 species providing materials had experienced economic collapse. Can we bring them back? Velther asked his advisors. Can we negotiate with humanity? His chief advisor, an elderly insectoid named Fen, spoke carefully. Prime, what would we negotiate? They asked for our help saving lives. We voted to build a monument instead. What can we possibly say to them? Velther had no answer. Overseer Krinth proposed sanctions. We should ban all trade with humanity. Any species that deals with them will be expelled from the council. The vote was called. It passed narrowly the next day. 5 more species announced their withdrawal from the council. The sanctions were meaningless. Humanity was already self-sufficient. The species leaving said the sanctions proved the council cared more about control than cooperation. Yunji Han, a human intelligence officer, was monitoring council communications from a secure facility. She compiled reports on the chaos, the accusations, the fracturing alliances. Her analysis was clear. The council would not survive this. The question was not if it would collapse, but how bad the collapse would be. She sent her report to Ji-hoon. His response was brief. Keep watching. Offer help to any species that asks. No conditions. That was the human approach now. No demands, no conditions, no complicated agreements. Just help when asked and walk away when done. 3 months after humanity walked out, Ambassador Zelik finally got his meeting. He traveled to a neutral station on the border of council space, where Ji-hoon agreed to meet him. Thank you for seeing me, Zelik said. You were one of the few who spoke up for us, Ji-hoon replied. I remember that. The council is falling apart. Systems are failing. Species are fighting. We need help. Ji-hoon nodded slowly. We are helping. We are evacuating refugees, sharing our technology freely, and offering aid to anyone who asks. What we are not doing is returning to the council. I understand. I am not asking you to return. I am asking. Zelik paused. I am asking if there is another way. Something better than what we had. Ji-hoon smiled for the first time in months. Maybe, but it has to be built by everyone, not controlled by a few. And it has to value action over tradition. Will you help us build it? We will work with anyone who wants to actually solve problems instead of just talking about them. But this time, we do it as equals. Zelik extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. Ji-hoon shook it. The council was unraveling. But something new was beginning. 6 months had passed since humanity walked out. The Galactic Council still existed, but barely. The Grand Chamber that once held 47 species now saw regular attendance from only 32. The rest sent junior representatives or excuses. The energy had changed from dignified tradition to desperate survival. Yuna Kim sat in a small conference room on Freeport Station, waiting for guests who were risking everything by coming here. She was humanity's new diplomatic liaison, though her title was deliberately vague. Humanity was not building a government or an empire. They were simply talking to whoever wanted to talk. The door opened. 3 figures entered, each looking around nervously, as if expecting council security to burst in at any moment. Chancellor Drex of the Reptilian Concordat was first. He was old even by his species' long-lived standards, with scales that had faded from bright green to a distinguished silver. He had been on the council for 400 years, and had seen enough to know when something was rotten. Behind him came Minister Prox of the Aquatic Federation, young and idealistic. She had only been appointed after the previous minister died of stress-related complications during the economic crisis. She had inherited a disaster and was desperately looking for solutions. The third was High Scholar Mix of the Silicon Collective, a crystalline being whose geometric body refracted light in complex patterns. Mix was not a politician, but a philosopher and historian. They had been documenting the Council's decline with scientific detachment, but even they could see that documentation alone would not save anyone. "Thank you for coming," Una said, gesturing to seats designed to accommodate different body types. "I know this meeting puts you at risk." "Risk," Greg said with a bitter laugh. "I have served the Council for 4 centuries. I have watched it become a monument to its own importance. The only risk is continuing to pretend it can be saved." Prox was more hesitant. "My government has not authorized me to negotiate withdrawal. I am here to explore options. I am here to understand," Mix said simply. "What happens when a system collapses? What comes after?" Una pulled up a display showing current galactic conditions. The map was color-coded. Green areas were stable. Yellow areas were experiencing difficulties. Red areas were in crisis. Most of the map was yellow or red. "This is what happens when an organization prioritizes structure over function," Una said. "The Council created elaborate rules to maintain power, but they forgot that power without purpose is just control. And control without legitimacy eventually breaks." "The Council is declaring your actions illegal," Prox said. "They passed a resolution stating that any species trading with humanity will face sanctions and possible expulsion." "We know," Una replied. "How did your government vote on that resolution?" Prox looked uncomfortable. "We abstained. We could not support it, but we feared the consequences of opposing it." "Fear is what keeps broken systems alive," Drex said. "I voted against it. My government is furious with me, but I am too old to pretend anymore." Una nodded. "Humanity is not asking anyone to follow us. We are not trying to replace the Council with something else that we control. We are simply showing that there are alternatives." She changed the display to show human operations. Evacuation routes, aid shipments, technology sharing, and cooperative defense agreements with 16 different species. We work with anyone who asks. We do not require membership in anything. We do not demand exclusive agreements. We help, and then we go home. That is all. Mix studied the data with evident fascination. "You have created a network without central authority. How do you maintain coherence?" "We do not try to," Una said. "Each relationship is separate. Each agreement is specific to the situation. We trust that if we help people solve real problems, they will remember that help. Trust works better than control." "The Council operated on control," Drex said. "Weighted votes, seniority systems, mandatory compliance. We told ourselves it was for stability. Really, it was to keep the founding species in power." "Did you always know this?" Prox asked him. "I suspected, but I was part of the system, so I benefited from not looking too closely. The humans forced me to look." There was silence for a moment. Then Mix spoke. "The Council cannot be reformed. The structure itself is the problem. To fix it, you would need to destroy everything it is built on." "Yes," Una said. "So what do we do?" Prox asked. She sounded young and a little bit scared. "My people are suffering. Our economy is in collapse. Our systems are failing. The Council offers no solutions, only demands that we maintain unity." Una leaned forward. "Then leave. Take care of your people. We will help if you ask." "Just like that?" Prox said. "Just like that?" Drex made a decision. "The Reptilian Concordat will formally withdraw from the Council within 1 week. I will announce it at the next session." Prox shook her head. "I do not have the authority to make that decision alone. My government is divided." "Then we will talk to your government," Una said. "No pressure. Just conversation." Mix's crystalline body chimed softly, the equivalent of a thoughtful hum. "I will return to my collective and present the data. We make decisions slowly, but I believe we will conclude that the Council is not serving its stated purpose." After the meeting ended, and the three visitors left, Yuna sat alone for a moment. Her colleague Taijin O entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "How did it go?" Taijin asked. He coordinated humanitarian operations and always looked tired these days. "Drex is ready to jump. Prox is scared, but considering it. Mix will think about it for 6 months and then make a perfectly logical decision." "That is 3 more," Taijin said. "We are up to 23 species in active cooperation with us. The Council is losing members faster than they can threaten them." Yuna sipped her coffee. "I keep wondering if we did the right thing. Walking out, I mean. So many systems are in crisis." "The systems were always in crisis," Taijin said. "The Council just hid it better. We did not create these problems. We stopped pretending they did not exist." Back on Station Concordia, the Council session was about to begin. Velther stood at the center platform, looking out at the half-empty chamber. He could remember when every seat was filled, when species considered it an honor to attend. Now they came only when forced. "This session is called to order," he said, his voice lacking its usual authority. "We must address the continued defections and the illegal cooperation with the former member species known as humanity." Drex stood up. He did not wait to be recognized. "I will save you some time, Prime. The Reptilian Concordat is withdrawing from the Council, effective immediately. We are doing this because the Council has failed to adapt, failed to serve its members, and failed to address real crises in favor of maintaining control." The chamber erupted. Some species shouted support. Others shouted condemnation. Krinth's mandibles clicked in fury. "You cannot simply announce withdrawal," Krinth said. "There are procedures, negotiations, transition periods." "File the paperwork," Drex said. "I will be too busy helping my people to read it." He walked out. The same words, the same gesture humanity had made. It was becoming a pattern. 5 more species announced withdrawal before the session ended. Velther adjourned the meeting early. There was no point continuing. Meanwhile, Dr. Minji Kang was making history of a different kind. She stood in a public broadcast facility, preparing to do something that would change everything. "Ready when you are." "Doctor," the technician said. Minji took a deep breath and began speaking to every communications channel in the galaxy. "My name is Dr. Minji Kang. 6 months ago, I presented evidence to the Galactic Council about a cosmic threat that will impact multiple systems. They ignored that evidence. Today, I am releasing all of our data, all of our technology, and all of our evacuation plans to everyone for free." She uploaded the files as she spoke. Terabytes of information, freely available. You do not need Council permission to save yourselves. You do not need anyone's authorization to protect your people. Here is everything you need. Use it, share it, modify it. We are not claiming ownership. We are claiming responsibility for helping however we can. The broadcast continued for 20 minutes as she explained the technology, the timeline, and the danger. She ended with a simple statement. The Council had a choice between protecting people and protecting pride. They chose pride. We choose people. Always people. No permission required. The response was immediate. 15 species downloaded the plans and began implementation within hours. 8 more announced they were withdrawing from the Council to focus on disaster preparation. 3 species sent delegations to human space asking for technical assistance. The humans helped all of them. Xi Jinhuang commanded humanity's defensive fleet, watching for potential Council military response. He did not expect actual war, but he had learned not to underestimate what desperate people might do. "Any hostile movements?" he asked his tactical officer. "None. The Council peacekeeping fleet is barely functional. Half their ships are experiencing maintenance issues because human technicians are gone. The other half is refusing orders because their home governments are withdrawing from the council. Siajan owed himself a small smile. So we prepare for peace instead of war. Is that not what we always wanted? Yes, Siajan said. But I did not think we would get it this way. On her home world, Minister Prox called an emergency cabinet meeting. She played them the recording of Dr. Kong's broadcast, then showed them the analysis of the cosmic threat. The humans are right, she said. The threat is real. If we stay focused on council politics, our people will die. I am asking this government to vote on withdrawal. The debate lasted 6 hours. In the end, the vote was unanimous. The Aquatic Federation became the 29th species to leave the Council. High Scholar Mix returned to the Silicon Collective and presented the data in the traditional crystalline way, through harmonic resonance patterns that conveyed complex information. The collective processed the information for 3 days. Their conclusion was mathematically certain. The Council was failing its stated purpose. Remaining was a logical dot. The Silicon Collective withdrew on the grounds of rational self-interest. Vel single quotes Tar sat alone in his quarters on Station Concordia. The station itself was failing now. Without human maintenance, ancient systems were breaking down. They had evacuated 2 entire sections just yesterday. His door chimed. Krinth entered without waiting for permission. We have lost 31 species in 6 months, Krinth said. More are considering withdrawal. The council is collapsing. I know. This is humanity's fault. Velther looked at him with tired eyes. No, this is our fault. We built a system that required absolute control to function. When one species refused to be controlled, the entire structure fell apart. That is not their failure. It is ours. Krinth's mandibles clicked in agitation. You cannot mean that. I mean exactly that. We had a chance to work with humanity as partners. Instead, we treated them as subordinates. Now they have shown the galaxy that partnership works better than hierarchy. We have no one to blame but ourselves. Krinth left without another word. Velther stood and looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was helping people. They were not conquering, not demanding, not controlling. Just helping. He wondered what that must feel like. Station Concordia died at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning. Not all at once, but slowly, system by system, like an old being taking its last breath. The catastrophic failure started in Sector 7, where a coolant regulator that had been installed 300 years ago finally gave up. The regulator had been maintained by human technicians for the last century. Without them, no one had noticed the warning signs. The coolant failure cascaded into the power grid. Emergency systems kicked in, but they were also old, also poorly maintained. Within 6 hours, 3,000 beings were evacuating in emergency pods. By noon, the evacuation order extended to the entire station. 12,000 years of history. Abandoned in a day, the council relocated to a temporary facility on Bastion Station, a much smaller complex in the outer reach. It was humiliating. The grand chamber that had once held 47 species now consisted of a converted cargo bay with portable seating. Only 16 species attended the first session in the new location. Velthar tried to maintain dignity as he called the meeting to order. Despite our current circumstances, the Council remains the legitimate governing body of civilized space. We will endure this temporary setback and emerge stronger. Ambassador Then, a young insectoid who had replaced Krinth after the old overseer suffered a breakdown, spoke carefully. Prime, with respect, we need to discuss realistic options. We have lost 33 member species. Our infrastructure is failing. Our currency is worthless. Multiple sectors are experiencing violence. We cannot simply declare ourselves legitimate and expect that to matter. The council has existed for 12,000 years, Velther said. We will not abandon it now. The council abandoned itself when it chose monuments over lives. Then replied. The words hung in the air. Even 6 months ago, such directness would have been unthinkable. Now it was just truth. While the council struggled to maintain relevance, the real galaxy was descending into chaos. The avian dominion and the insectoid hive had been Cold War enemies for 3,000 years. Only council mediation and peacekeeping had kept them from open conflict. With the council weakened and the peacekeeping forces dissolved, old hatred surfaced like poison from a wound. It started with a border dispute. Then sabotage. Then an attack on a civilian transport. Within a week, they were at war. Captain Do-Yun Lee watched the conflict escalate from the bridge of his flagship. His orders from Earth were clear. Defend human assets and any species that requested help. Do not get involved in council conflicts unless absolutely necessary. The Dominion is asking for military assistance, his communications officer reported. They claim the Hive started the war. The Hive is saying the same thing about the Dominion, his tactical officer added. Do-Yun studied the tactical display. Both sides were lying. Both sides had provoked the other. Both were now committed to a war neither could afford. Send the same message to both, Do-Yun said. We will help with humanitarian evacuation and medical support. We will not provide military assistance to either side. They started this. They can end it. The war was not the only crisis. Piracy had exploded across former council space. With the peacekeeping fleet gone and trade routes unprotected, criminal organizations moved in quickly. Merchant ships were being raided daily. Some species could protect their own shipping. Others could not. Boram Song was a human historian who had spent 20 years studying galactic civilizations. Now she was documenting the collapse in real time, recording interviews with refugees, politicians, and ordinary beings trying to survive. She interviewed a merchant named Vex, the same crystalline engineer who had discovered his station's life. Support was dependent on human systems all those months ago. Did you ever think it would get this bad? Boram asked. Vex's light patterns flickered with what might have been sadness. No, we thought the council was eternal. We thought the systems would just keep working. We did not understand that systems require maintenance, both technical and political. The humans did that maintenance, and we never noticed. Do you blame humanity for leaving? I blame the council for giving them no choice. If someone is drowning and you refuse to help them, you cannot be angry when they swim away. Boram's next interview was with a former council official, a bureaucrat who had processed paperwork for 200 years. He refused to give his name. The corruption was always there, the official said. The senior species had private accounts where resources were redirected. The voting system was rigged through favors and threats. We all knew. We all participated. It was just how things worked. Why did no one speak up? Because speaking up meant losing your position, your status, your comfortable life. So we stayed silent and told ourselves we were maintaining stability. And the humans? The official was quiet for a long moment. The humans saw what we were. They tried to fix it. When they realized they could not fix it, they left rather than become part of it. I think that is the difference between them and us. They had principles that mattered more than comfort. The corruption revelations came from an unexpected source, Yunji Han, the human intelligence officer who had been monitoring council communications. She released thousands of classified files showing exactly how the council really functioned. The files showed resource hoarding, vote manipulation, and systematic exploitation of junior member species. They showed that the weight given to different species votes was not based on merit or contribution, but on how much they bribed senior members. They showed that disaster relief funds were stolen. That scientific research was suppressed if it threatened certain industries. That species were kept weak and dependent deliberately. The galaxy saw everything. The remaining council members tried to deny it, then tried to claim it was taken out of context, then finally just stopped responding. What could they say? The evidence was complete. 12 more species announced withdrawal, bringing the council down to just 19 members. Several of those were only staying because they had no alternative system to join yet. Kyungmin Yoon was one of hundreds of human engineers now traveling through former council space, helping rebuild infrastructure. She had spent the last month on a small station in the mid-reach, teaching local engineers how to maintain their own systems. "You do not have to help us," said the station chief, a reptilian named Kresh. "We were part of the council. We ignored humanity's warnings." Kyungmin tightened a connection and ran a diagnostic. "You personally? Did you ignore the warnings?" "No, but my government did." "Then I am not helping your government. I am helping you and everyone who lives here. That is enough." She finished the repair and showed Kresh how to perform the same maintenance. "The key is regular monitoring. Do not wait for failures. Prevent them. The council never taught us prevention. They taught us dependence." "I know," Kyungmin said. "That is why they failed." In the temporary council chamber, Velther faced the worst session of his career. Only 12 species were represented today. The rest had sent messages saying they were too busy with their own crises to attend. "We need to discuss reconstruction," Velther said. "Of what?" asked Ambassador Zelik, who had remained on the council despite his private cooperation with humanity. "The organization? The currency? Our credibility? All of it is gone." "We can rebuild," Velther insisted. "We have done it before." "When?" Then asked. "The council has existed for 12,000 years without a major challenge. We never had to rebuild because we never faced real consequences for our failures. Now we are, and we have no idea how to actually solve problems. Then we learn. From whom? The only species that knew how to solve problems just released evidence of our corruption and walked away." The meeting ended with nothing accomplished. It was becoming a pattern. Jiwan Beek worked as a mediator for species trying to adjust to life outside the council. She helped them establish new trade agreements, set up independent communication networks, and navigate the complex process of becoming truly self-governing. One of her clients was the Aquatic Federation, still adjusting to independence after centuries in the council. "We do not know how to make decisions without asking permission," Minister Prox admitted during a consultation. "Everything went through council approval. Now we have freedom, and it feels terrifying." "Freedom is terrifying at first," Jiwan said. "You are responsible for your own choices. But that also means you can make choices that actually serve your people. What if we make wrong choices? Then you learn and try again. That is what humanity does. We make mistakes constantly. The difference is we admit them and adjust." Prox looked at her curiously. "Do humans not fear failure?" "We fear it. We just fear stagnation more." The violence continued to spread. 3 more species went to war with neighbors. 7 systems descended into internal conflicts as governments that had relied on council support collapsed. The body count was rising daily. Captain Do Yun Lee coordinated with other human commanders to provide humanitarian aid. They evacuated civilians from war zones, provided medical supplies, and protected refugee convoys. But they did not take sides. They did not try to stop the wars. "We could stop this," his tactical officer said, watching another battle unfold on long-range sensors. "We have the military capability." "We have the capability," Dojun agreed. "But we do not have the right. These species need to choose peace themselves. If we force it, we become the council, just with a different name. So we just watch? We help the victims. We offer mediation if asked, but we do not impose solutions. That is the line we will not cross. It was a hard line to hold, watching people suffer. But Do-yoon remembered the lessons of Earth's history. Imposed peace was just delayed war. Back on Earth, Ambassador Ji-hoon Park met with the human government to discuss the situation. The galaxy is in chaos, the Secretary General said. Some people are asking if we made a mistake. If we should have stayed and tried to reform the council from within. We tried that for 150 years, Ji-hoon said. The council was not reformable because it was working exactly as designed. It was designed to maintain power for senior species. It was designed to extract resources from junior species. The chaos we see now is not new. It was always there. We just stopped helping them hide it. The death toll is rising. It would have risen anyway. The cosmic threat we warned about is coming. If we had stayed in the council, we would be sitting in meetings debating procedures while billions died. At least now we are saving everyone we can. And after? When the chaos settles. Ji-hoon looked out the window at Earth below. Then we help them build something better. If they ask. In the former council space, something new was emerging from the chaos. Species were forming small cooperative networks, helping each other without central authority. They were calling it the Open Compact, a name suggested by humanity, but adopted by everyone. The Open Compact had no headquarters, no bureaucracy, no weighted votes. It was just species working together because cooperation was better than isolation. Problems were solved through direct negotiation, not endless procedures. It was messy. It was inefficient. It was working. Former Prime Vel Thur watched it develop from his quarters on Bastion Station. The Galactic Council had held only 4 sessions in the last month. The attendance kept dropping. They were becoming irrelevant. He knew what had to be done. He just did not want to admit it yet. The council was dead. It just had not stopped moving. The cosmic threat arrived exactly 23 months after. Dr. Minji Kang had warned the council. It came as predicted, a massive stellar ejection event that swept through space like a wave of destruction. 12 systems lay in its path, home to 8 billion beings. 3 of those systems suffered catastrophic damage, not because the technology to protect them did not exist, but because their governments had refused to implement it. Pride, politics, and stubborn loyalty to the fallen. Council had cost them everything. The other 9 systems survived. They survived because they had downloaded the shielding technology Minji had released for free. They survived because human engineers had traveled to their worlds to help with installation. They survived because they had chosen to accept help instead of clinging to broken systems. Captain Do-yoon Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stellar wave pass through a protected system. The shields held. The planet below remained intact, its billions of inhabitants safe. Confirmation from all protected sites, his communications officer reported. Shield integrity at 93% across the board. No breaches. No casualties. Da-jun allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Send the all-clear signal. Begin shield deactivation sequence. On the surface of that planet, millions of beings looked up at their sky and saw the stellar fire pass overhead, held back by technology that had been given to them freely. Many of them wept. Some prayed. All of them understood that they were alive because one species had cared more about life than about politics. In the 3 systems that had refused help, the death toll was staggering. 2 billion beings died in a matter of hours. Planets that had hosted civilizations for thousands of years were rendered uninhabitable. The survivors fled in whatever ships they could find, becoming refugees in a galaxy that was barely holding itself together. The human relief fleet was waiting for them. Taijin, O coordinated the largest humanitarian operation in human history. 52 ships, 400,000 personnel, and resources from every human colony came together to help people who had rejected their help just months before. Why are we helping them? A young crew member asked him. They refused our technology. They called us arrogant. They said we were exaggerating the threat. Taijin looked at the refugee ships on his display, packed with survivors, traumatized and desperate. Because they are people. That is all the reason we need. The crew member was quiet for a moment. That is what makes us different, is not it? We help anyway. Yes, Taijin said. That is what makes us us. In the temporary council chamber on Bastion Station, only 11 species remained. The meeting had been called to discuss the cosmic threat aftermath, but everyone knew what was really being discussed. Velthur stood at the center of the converted cargo bay that had once been a grand chamber. He looked older now, his silver feathers dull and ragged. He had not slept well in months. The council must acknowledge reality, he said, his voice carrying none of its old authority. We have failed. Not recently. Not just with humanity. We have been failing for thousands of years, and we built elaborate systems to hide that failure from ourselves. The room was silent. For a being like Velthur, to admit such things was unthinkable. But the unthinkable had become routine. Humanity warned us of the cosmic threat. We dismissed them. They shared their technology freely. We called it arrogance. They evacuated billions of refugees. We debated sanctions. At every opportunity, we chose pride over wisdom. Ambassador Then, the young insectoid who had watched the old order collapse, spoke gently. Prime, what are you proposing? I am proposing that we vote to dissolve the Galactic Council. Officially, completely, we acknowledge our failures. Release all remaining members from their obligations. And step aside. After 12,000 years? One of the remaining ambassadors asked. We simply end it? Yes, Velthur said. We end it with honesty, instead of letting it die slowly while we pretend otherwise. We owe the galaxy at least that much dignity. The vote was held. 10 species voted to dissolve. 1 abstained. None voted to continue. The Galactic Council ended at 1647 hours on a Wednesday afternoon. There was no ceremony, no grand declaration, just a simple vote recorded in a nearly empty room. The organization that had claimed to represent galactic civilization for 12,000 years ceased to exist. Velthur sent one final message before leaving Bastion Station. It went to every species in the galaxy, transmitted on every frequency. The Galactic Council is dissolved. We failed in our duty to serve the species of this galaxy. We became focused on maintaining our own power instead of protecting those we claim to represent. To those we harmed through our negligence and pride, particularly humanity, we apologize. To those who are building new forms of cooperation, we wish you success. Learn from our failures. Never let structure become more important than purpose. The message was signed by all 11 remaining members. Humanity received the message. Ambassador Ji-Hoon Park read it in his office on Earth. He felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a deep sadness for all the wasted time and unnecessary suffering. His assistant, So-Min Le, knocked and entered. She would be humanity's representative to the new cooperative networks being formed. The Open Compact is holding its first General Assembly next month, she said. 38 species are participating. They have invited us to help facilitate, not to lead? Ji-Hoon asked. Not to lead. They want humanity as a participant, not as an authority. Equal voice, equal vote. Good, Ji-Hoon said. That is what we wanted all along. The Open Compact Assembly was held on Freeport Station, the same neutral location where humanity had first met with defectors from the Council. The station had been expanded significantly. Its facilities upgraded to handle diplomatic functions, not unlike the old council chamber with its rings of seniority. The open, compact meeting room was circular with no center. Every